Welcome to another episode of Tiny Chair Talks. We're having big conversations in tiny chairs. Today we're going to talk about trusting in God. Let's get started.
These are cozy.
Welcome back, Devin Lilly. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're talking about today trusting God. So what does it even mean to trust in God or trust in anyone?
Yeah, trusting God would be, at least to me, it seems like putting God, putting a relationship with God, putting what God's promises, putting what we read in the Bible and what God wants for us over sometimes our own interests, beliefs, or even sometimes our well-being, putting that before anything else. So true trust, it looks like that, and that's where we see so many of people's favorite stories from the Bible of trust, of people taking a step for God in difficult situations or where the outcome is not known.
Right. And so a lot of the time when people talk about trusting in God, I think it is those bigger situations. You think of like Joseph being sold into slavery, right? Like it's a huge event.
Yeah.
Noah and the ark, like these are huge events. And I think, people talk about those kind of events as far as trust goes. And I think it's almost easier sometimes to trust in God when you're going through a big event rather than a small one, because that big event is kind of out of your control to a certain degree. What do you think about all those little things? How can we trust God in more day-to-day sort of situations, or maybe not so life-changing situations? How do we take trusting God in this big epic sense down to a daily level?
Right. I think for us as Christians, it's really important to not go out of our way to seek the giant or to seek the Goliath in our life. Because then we get into this thing of people are like, well, where's mine? Where's my mountain experience where I need to move this mountain, where I need to move this mountain, or I need to go out on a limb and my life, my family, my job is at stake, everything, Not everyone has those.
Where's my opportunity to have a testimony?
Yeah, and so it's important to keep in mind that preparing for if you will have a large experience in your life like that, which will require amazing amounts of trust and belief in God, are shown and expressed through the small actions too, and in remaining diligent to those small things that you need to remain truthful to and honest to, and going on a limb to trust God in those, because even the smaller things in our life still require trust in God, or at least things that we believe as trust. Like for those to believe that something as basic as giving tithe or offering, that giving God some of my finances, even though I feel like I would be much better off with that percentage of money back.
Right.
That's seen as a small thing or a big thing to some people.
Right.
Or even in doing my morning prayers and devotions, just giving my life to God for that each day. Is that a big deal or a small deal?
Right.
And so a way I like to really put it a lot of times is looking at the story of David and how he ended up at the Goliath situation. Is David was anointed to be king, but then he returned to normal duties that were not beneath him. And so he had to trust God that I'm a king, I'm meant for the throne. However, I'm going to serve the sheep. I'm going to do errands of just delivering grain and
all
bread.
The little things.
And in his diligence and his trust to God, that I see that there's a plan within this, through his integrity to trust God in the smaller things of life, it did lead him to an experience like Goliath, where it was a no-brainer. Where he says, trusting in God, I'm used to that. My life is trusting in God.
His diligence just in the mundane built that reflex of trust in a bigger thing.
Where he says, this is just another thing that I'm going to trust God in this. I'm prepared.
Just came naturally.
Where I'm now ready for this giant slaying experience because I've already built this trust in God over time in the small things, which now it's so much easier to give that over to God in the bigger things.
Right. And giving it over to God definitely goes into the next question I have here, which is, how do you get off of this cycle? It happens to all of us. I'm giving it to God, and then you take it right back. And then I'm giving this to God, and then you take it back. How do we break that cycle and stay focused and truly let go of things to God, truly hand it over? How do we do that?
I feel like Christians in general sometimes become spiritual addicts or spiritual addicts to a spiritual high. Especially in the church with how many conferences and concerts and worship events and mission trips that we almost schedule out our spiritual intakings of our spiritual highs. We almost plan them out into the year where we know, well, I need to be ready to give my life over to God at that point. And then between those times, we take it back. And then we get kind of addicted to this spiritual high where we feel so close to God. And then at other moments we can feel so far away where there's even a need for us to be like, oh man, this is going to take a lot for me to really give this over to Him. For me, it seems a lot more practical than you'd think. It is ensuring that every day in small ways and big ways that you're giving things over to God. That you're in that regular practice to where it doesn't become a once a week or once a month thing if you end up at church where you're like, oh, well, it's been a week since I've talked to you, God, and giving things over. But it's actually a daily thing is really important. And in the same way that we're talking about trusting in God that if I'm diligent to commune with God each and every day, that will be worth it.
He's going to hold His promise and
so trusting Him in those smaller things. It's really practical of I need a little bit of God in my life at least every day. Like something as easy as that, and for some people that's going to take scheduling that into their day. Like, well, I'm not going to eat or drink anything today until I commune with God, till I pray to God. I'm not leaving my bedroom, or these basic small things in our life that some people who haven't even experienced that yet, you don't even know the wealth of fulfillment and wholeness that you will feel in that regular communication with God, because you've become systematized to the addiction of seeking these spiritual highs of, man, I want to feel that again. How do I get that closeness with God? How do I get that same connection with Him? Well, I need to go find a mission trip. I need to go find when's the next, big concert coming around, the Christian experience. So, not looking to those experiences where we're almost planning our give back to God, but saying this is actually going to be a daily trust and communication with Him, to where I'm not engaged in that. And so that touches on something that's been a theme that I've seen occurring in my life through others and myself, is that faith and trust in God is not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's not an experience. What the actual experience and emotion is in our brain is the doubt and the fear and the, holding on. That's the actual, sinful feeling that comes up out of us. It's the trust and the faith. That's the logical, factual. God, I don't feel your closeness this morning. I don't see you today, but I'm going to be diligent and trust in you anyway. That's where that's why it's so dangerous to get addicted to those spiritual highs, like you said. It's because true trust in God isn't this experience that you're having. It's that diligent daily, God, I trust in you. These are your promises, calling those out. I think reading God's promises in the Word and seeing how He fulfills those over and over again is the most powerful way to bring yourself to trust God. What are some of your favorite Bible promises to kind of hold on to and cling on to, that kind of pull you through the big things or the little things? What are your favorites, or what do you depend on? I really depend on stories in themselves. One-off verses and those types of things are really important to me. But going back to what you said previously about the faith and trust, and you brought up doubt, was to point out that faith does not imply that there's an absence of doubt.
Right.
And trust doesn't imply that there's no doubt involved.
Exactly.
There's actually many places in the Bible where I feel like that person did have doubt, but they still trusted.
They still
It's the important that the trust overrides your doubt.
Absolutely.
Not that you have no doubts whatsoever. And so I think that's important to keep in mind too for those that are like, well, I want to trust in God, but I have doubts.
Right.
Well,
You
of
can
course,
trust
of
in
course
God
you
with
do.
doubts.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you
Yeah.
doubt that oh man, giving up this money, to God that I believe is rightly His, that's going to really struggle. I don't. How am I going to, receive back from God in that way?
Right.
Or
How am I going to pay my bill if I do this?
Yeah.
How's that going to work?
And so doubting, we have to allow our faith and trust in God to override our doubts.
Absolutely.
And so along that line, one that I really love is that strengthens me is Peter going out in the water to walk with Jesus. Is that there was some doubt involved almost, but there was trust too, in his trusting in God and seeing what happened there. Just I love that story because he says, is that Jesus? He says, if that's you, tell me to come out in the water. I think that's Jesus, but I need to know that it's you. And he calls him out in the water. He goes and walks out to Jesus, which took immense trust and faith that's even possible.
Right.
And to go out to him, and he sinks, but even immediately, Jesus saves him. When he says, save me, immediately, and he saves him.
Even in his doubt, even in the water.
Right, and it was immediate too.
Yeah.
And so keeping those stories in mind, that's what I really connect with. And also, promises like lean not on your own understanding and trusting, giving things over to God.
Yeah.
And so that's really important to me as well.
Absolutely. That's a great illustration of, you have this immense trust. You might have periods where you're falling in the water. You might have feelings where you have to say, save me. And he always, there's no hesitant. You could walk on the water, fall in, walk, fall. He's never going to stop pulling you out of the water.
Right.
It's
Trust
such a beautiful,
knowing that if I take this step, he will save me.
Yes, absolutely. That's fantastic. I love that illustration. So, I think in another video we discuss, not you and I, but there is a discussion in another one of our talks about free will. But can you, and I think this kind of goes into that, but can you talk maybe a little bit about how we can trust God despite the fact that bad things happen to people? What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a difficult question.
Yeah.
One that I've been asked a lot of time, especially working in the hospital previously before becoming a pastor. I was a chaplain in a hospital.
Yeah.
And so we're encountered a lot with the difficult things of the world and the big question of why does God allow bad things to happen to good people?
Yep.
Which is a can of worms in itself. But really it depends on your relationship with God too and how you're willing to view it and your openness to what is and isn't from God.
Yeah.
And so to dispel some things, I don't think God is sending ill things towards people.
Right.
I don't think He's the one causing a lot of these issues in your family's lives or in
Right.
your life, or the things that you see around you, the great, trauma and issues that we see. But in what is allowed and what is the circumstance that take place, we have to keep in mind that God's design for the world, ultimately, it's to bring glory back to Him, and that all things will show glory, and that all of it is for that. And I do think with what we take of the experiences around us and what we see in the world, a lot of it can be used to inspire us to seek something other than ourselves. That possibly there are situations around us that we cannot control,
Right.
and that we cannot solve on our own. To actually seek outside ourselves, that sometimes it forces us to say, where do I go to now?
Yeah.
I can solve a lot of things on my own. If my car breaks
Right.
down, I don't have to pray to God that it'll be fixed.
Right.
If I'm about to lose my apartment or my house, I don't have to really trust in God to solve this. I can figure it out myself. But there are some things where it takes, God, this doesn't look like something you're responsible for. Where are you? Where are you in this? That will actually hopefully draw us closer to God to be able to glorify Him and say, all of these things going on around me, I know this isn't your desire, this isn't your plan
Right.
For this pain in my life.
Right.
But I seek you and I trust you, and knowing that you're a loving, caring, honoring, and you're you're forgiving and you seek to restore and bring health, and that ultimately he wants all people to come to him. And I think what we're seeing and experiencing in our life, especially now with how crazy things are, is kind of degrading to something of not what God's plan is for heaven or after Jesus comes again, is that he has something so much better in mind. And I think a lot of us are starting to see of what's actually going on around us is not what God actually intends and plans for us.
Right.
And so I pray and hope, and I think that it is in a way for us to look back to God and say, God, I don't think this is from you, but I need to see you, and I need to experience you, and I need to have you in my life, because I don't know how to process this otherwise. I don't know how to funnel these issues that I'm seeing and experiencing. Where are you? Where are you in all this?
Yeah.
And so I have to say, I don't know where God is in that. If you're telling me that your family member has cancer or something, I don't know where God is in that. I'll answer that. I'm not God. However, I do know that God has a better plan, that God does heal, and that God does have a plan of salvation.
Right. Maybe not for the next week. I mean, not saying he doesn't, but the bigger picture is the true plan we need to be focused on.
Right. And so if you believe what God has done up to this point, there's no reason why he won't continue to do that.
Right.
That God is restoring, God is loving, and that's his actual plan. And seeing otherwise, that's another element of trust. Is that hopefully your trust in God will be strengthened when what you are seeing is not matching up with what you read of God.
Right.
And that what you're feeling is not lining up with the God that you know.
Right.
And so really what we need to pray when we are seeing and experiencing these things is God, give me faith above what it looks like. Give me faith above what I feel right now and what I'm seeing.
Right.
Because I need that.
Right. I think that's excellent. And you know, I always think of the story of Joseph. Do I think that God wanted his brothers to, was it his plan? Did he devise this plan to have those brothers put him in that pit so that he could be a slave? I don't really think so. I think he used the sin of others to work for his purposes because Joseph faithfully served him through that. And so he blessed everything that he touched. But I think that he could have done the same outcome could have occurred in different ways. And so I think when we look at things that are happening in day-to-day life that are positive or negative, it's not always maybe God saying, writing a story. This is how the story is going to play out. We have that free will, and people have the free will to hurt others or to cause pain. But that the true plan that has been written, that God's like, yes, this is what's going to happen, is what we have to hope for, is that no more sorrow, no more tears, that he's returning and making it all new, and that's so powerful. And I think, trusting above, recognizing what does come from him.
Right.
Right, that all these things down here that are causing you to suffer, that's not caused by him.
Yeah, and it's important to make that distinction, because unfortunately, a lot of people have attributed a lot of bad things to God, but it actually doesn't align with God's character. And so you can't blame God for things that don't line up with who he is, because people act according to what you know of them in their history and track record. And so God's purposes and desires for his people are true, and they are what they are. And so lining up with, God, this isn't lining up with what I think you are. Maybe this isn't from you.
Yeah.
That's important to make that distinction. And to obviously, like you said, understand the free will is that just like people have the free will to say, is this from God, is this not? Or, I'm going to trust God or I'm not going to.
Right, absolutely.
We have that free will. And so hopefully with that, it brings us to a place of trust and a deepened relationship with God.
Right, and ultimately all of it, trust is a choice.
Right.
That we can, it's not always a feeling. It's not always, coming from what we're experiencing. If we're experiencing pain or sorrow or death or what have you, it's this choice of, God, I'm going to trust you. I don't feel it right now. I don't, I see all of this pain and suffering, but I'm choosing to trust you anyway. I think a lot of the time saying it out loud even, because if you don't if you're not feeling it and you're just like praying it, then it's but if you say out loud, I think that has such a powerful impact. I don't know, that's my weird thing is if I'm feeling concerned, God, I trust you out loud. It does amazing things. So very cool. Trusting is a choice.
Yes.
And we can always make that choice. And he gives us that opportunity. Thank you so much for another episode. Thank you for watching another episode of Tiny Chair Talks. Leave a comment down below. What are some times that you have trusted in God and you just have seen the blessings overflow as a result? And what kinds of things do you experience in your life that make you wonder, how can I trust God? Leave us these questions and comments below. We want to hear with you. We want to hear from you. We want to have conversation with you. That's what the show is all about. Leave a comment. Go ahead and give us a like, subscribe, notification bell. Visit us on theprojectrefresh.org, and we'll see you at the next episode.